yeah, the hatred that I personally have experienced from people waving Bible verses in my face as they're telling me like I'm an abomination, I'm going to hell, I'm doing a horrible thing for sitting with my girlfriend at Pride. So it hurts.
Welcome back to the Finding Something Real podcast, friend. This is your host, Janelle Wood, and I am so excited that you are listening in or watching season 7 of the podcast. And here today, I'm very excited because with me is a very special young woman in my life. I care very much for her, and I'm so excited to be starting off season 7 with her. I'm super grateful that a few weeks ago, when I chatted with her about possibly coming on, she was like, "Yeah, I'm down." And she's here today, and that's my niece, Noelle. Noelle, welcome to the Finding Something Real podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I am so excited too. Have you ever been on a podcast
I
before?
have.
You have?
Uh-huh.
How did I not know this? What podcast was it? What was it about?
It's not super, I don't know if it ever got published or not, but I was on a really small committee for Snohomish for Equity Youth
Okay.
when I was in high school, and we made a podcast episode.
What was the topic? What were you talking about?
It was kind of about our group and our goals and like what kind of we stand for, which is like equity and anti-racism and being inclusive in the city of Snohomish as youth. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I grew up in Snohomish too. I know it's changed a lot. I can't even remember how many decades it's been since I was a kid. Um, but it's been a few. And it's a small town. So you grew up in Snohomish, which is about 45 minutes north of Seattle. I'd love for you to share about whatever you want to share about. I'll ask you more about your past here in a minute, but I'd love for you to share about your present. Who are you? What's important to you? That kind of thing.
Hmm. Okay. I am Noelle. I'm a student at Western in Bellingham, which is really fun. I enjoy it. Um, and let's see. I'm an artist. I love to create things in all various many types of mediums and such. And I love being outside. So,
Awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
good
Yeah, and
stuff.
Western is beautiful. What are you
Western
studying?
is so beautiful. I'm studying biology.
Okay.
Um, yeah, it's difficult, but it's so interesting. So I think I'm gonna stick with it.
Yeah, what do you wanna do with your biology studies when you're done?
I'd love to be a teacher. I want to be like maybe a middle or high school biology teacher.
Mm.
So, yeah,
Have you talked to Brian yet? My husband, Brian?
a, a little bit. Everyone tells me to. They're like, "Oh, you should talk to your uncle." He did that. Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my husband, um, for those of you listening or watching right now, he was a science teacher for 12 years, I think, in high school, in a public high school setting, and he taught, like general science, chemistry, biology. I think he even taught math a couple times. Um, Now he's an administrator. He was an administrator in the high school setting, and now he's an administrator for middle school students. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, at a middle school, so he knows a few things.
Mhm.
Yeah, he knows a little bit of that
I
world.
think I think so. Yeah. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, when we first met, actually, it was a really interesting conversation with him about science and God. I remember that. Yeah, and his work. And now that I've been doing this podcast for a little while, we have some really good conversations about that. And I'm like, oh man, there's so much that I had no idea of back then. Yeah, I'd love to hear more about your growing up,
Mhm.
Noel.
Yeah, I grew up in Snohomish, which was it's got that small town mentality, but there are like a few people there. It's like it's not too tiny. Which yeah, it was a good. good size, I think, for me to like make friends and have a good community and stuff. And I think Snohomish, like growing up in Snohomish, after leaving Snohomish and coming to Bellingham, I have found that like people from Snohomish and specifically like my high school, I feel like they're so kind. Like and they really like try and like they like hold doors open for people and like let like they're just like kind. And I feel like I don't experience that as much in Bellingham. So I'm glad to be from a very kind town. It's awesome. And it does have its problems and I do complain, but overall it's home. So it's awesome. Yeah, it's done me well.
Good. Yeah. Yeah, and you love Bellingham right now. What do you love about it?
I think it's like all these new opportunities, all these new experiences. Everything's so like fresh and young here. It's very like very college. And there's a lot of people that are just like me, which is really awesome. To be able to like find my community and realize that like, oh, there's more to the world than Snohomish, Washington, which is awesome to be able to experience. And I've learned so much, and it's crazy to think that like I don't know, I still have things to learn. I'm in a year from now, I'm gonna be like, yeah, I've learned even more than I could ever imagine. So yeah,
Yep. So tell me about your family of origin. Tell me about the family that you grew up
right,
in.
yes. So I have like a interesting family story. It's a lot of messy, complicated BS. But we started out. So I'm the oldest of. I have four siblings, um, from various different, but all combined families. So yeah, my biological dad and my mom, they had me, and they had my brother Nolan, and then they split. And my mom was a single mom for a while. She had a really difficult time like affording us, like fair enough. It's a really difficult point, and I'm very thankful for her effort and her strength in that time because she really kept us safe. Um, and eventually, I was I was young. I think I was around 2 or 3 when they divorced, and then 3 to like 5 ish was kind of around the time where we were moving towards like um I don't know, meeting Joey, my stepfather.
Mhm. My
So my
brother.
mom, yeah. So
Yeah.
my mom met my dad, who I'm gonna refer to him as my dad, and then the other guy, we'll call him my biological dad. So just to keep those separate. But yeah, so they got married, him and my mom, and they had Adrian, who is my sister, and they had Julian much later, who is my brother. Um, and yeah, so me, Nolan, and Adrian mostly until Julian was born grew up together. And then I also have a sister from my biological dad's side who lives in Edmonds. Her name is Emily. Um, and yeah, we mostly grew up um, together. I spent most of the time at my mom's house. But like on the weekends and like every other weekend and holidays and stuff, I'd go see my biological dad. And my sister and me and Nolan would go. Which wasn't a super awesome situation for me. I no longer see him. We don't have any contact, and I don't have any interest in ever contacting him. Um, but yeah, it's life is good now. We're chilling.
Well, I'm going to ask you to go a little deeper if you're willing, I guess. It's up to you how much you want to share here. But why wasn't that relationship great? Tell me a little bit more about your relationship with your biological father.
Hmm. I'm trying to find how to phrase it right. Like I think he just didn't know how to be a dad. I think he was really young when he got married and kind of didn't have any interest in having kids, but just the fact that he did, he now had to take care of them, and he didn't do a great job of taking care of them. He was kind of more interested in himself and like what he wanted, what his interests were. And he was not very kind to us. He was quite mean, and it hurt. It was not a good time. Yeah, and that was every other weekend or every weekend for about 12 years. So, yeah.
When did you stop going?
Um I was 12. I was in 6th grade. And they're kind of things were starting to get more serious. Like we were getting older, like I was getting into arguments with him and we were kind of just like really butting heads, just like I didn't want to see him. It was yeah, it was just not fun. I would always dread going over there because I knew that it was just not going to be a good time. Um, so yeah, eventually in 2016, after like a lifetime of legal struggle, he gave up custody of me and Nolan, um, so that he wouldn't have to pay child support, I think, um, which was a blessing. I think we celebrated immensely after we found that out, because it was just such a relief to not have to see him. So yeah, just be nice to your kids. Love them, show them love. It's important.
Yeah, how do you think that relationship has affected you as a young person?
It definitely has. As with anyone, I think, in their relationship with their parents, it shapes you a lot. Um, but I actually wrote my college essay about this,
Hmm.
and it was just that, like, I have experienced someone who is really, really, like, awful, and it shows me that I do not want to be like that at all. I want
Mm.
to be as far from that as I can. And I really want to try, and I really want to, like, just put effort in, and I think that's like what you can do. That's all you can do.
Mm.
And just the fact that he never tried that hard, we took notice of, and we felt like really left behind. Um, and yeah, I just want to treat my friends and my family and my kids, maybe if I have those, and just like with so much love, because it's
Yeah.
it's hard when you don't receive it,
Hmm.
and it does affect
Yeah,
you
it creates the wound there, for sure. I think that
for sure.
that daddy wound.
12 years of it.
For
Yep.
sure.
Yeah.
And then it was maybe, well, complicated by the fact that you had another father figure in your life. I know he's my brother and
Hmm.
I love him too, but I want you to feel comfortable sharing whatever you want to share here.
Yeah.
What was that like having a, another dad in your life?
I think he was like also a blessing. Just like he came at a really good time, I think. He really helped my mom out. And they were so young and so cute, their little meet cute story. I just love it. And they met at a Verizon party from I think my grandma worked there, and so did he, and then they met at a party. It was so cute. And they just liked each other from the very beginning, and it's just so sweet to me. Um, and yeah, he's been in my life since I was 3, so I don't ever remember a time where he wasn't around. Um, and he has always been kind of the like kind of how I was saying, like I don't want to be like him at all. He also like knows that story, and he doesn't want to be like him either. So just like keeping that in mind of being like a better father than the first guy. So yeah, and he's always taken care of us. He's always been there. He's always been my real dad. Like it's yeah, he's my dad, and he's always taking care of us. So,
So, you know what you signed up for here.
mhm.
Tell me about your relationship with Christianity, especially when you were younger. Yeah.
So when I was younger, I was into church. I was a little church kid. Um, and I really liked it because they made it really fun for us. Like we do games and candy and singing, and like my friends were there, and it was kind of just this thing that we would do. And I always kind of liked everything but the church part of it. I always found it kind of boring. Um, and that just reminds me of this story, which I'm gonna share, which I think is great. And I was at VBS in, I think, 2013, and somebody asked me to close the door, and I was in like a big group of kids. Somebody asked me to close the door. So I get up and I close the door, and when I come back, everyone got a book except me. And so they ask a question, and they're like, "Who here hasn't asked Jesus into their heart?" And I raised my hand because I didn't get a book and I wanted a book. And they think that I haven't asked Jesus into my heart, which before this time I don't think that I had. Or I don't know, I just hadn't really like made an actual effort to do that. So
Mhm.
they took me aside and they were like, "It's really important. Like this is a really big day for you. Like you're asking Jesus in your heart." And the whole time I'm like, "This is a total accident. Like I wasn't supposed to be here. I just needed a book." Um, but I just think that's so funny because it was just like and that's not, I have no negative connotations towards that at all. I was a kid and I thought it was funny. And I was really into church for a while after that too. I
Yeah.
went to Camp Gilead, which is such a cute little camp, up in Carnation. Um, yeah, and I really liked it for a while until I kind of started critically thinking a little bit more, and kind of forming my own opinions and kind of like thinking for
Yeah.
myself what I really believe rather than like just what I've heard since
Yeah.
I was a
Which,
kid.
going
Yeah.
back to that story that you
So,
shared when
yeah.
they were like, okay, now we're going to ask Jesus into our heart. Did you say anything
Yeah.
at that moment?
uh,
Um, or were you like, how old were you?
oh, I think 2013 I was, what is that? 9? Yeah,
Okay,
I
so
was
just
just
went
like,
along to get along then, huh?
sure, I guess I'm here now.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So for you, kind of speaking about that, was it ever about Jesus or was it mostly about church for you?
My dislike for religion?
No, no.
Interesting.
You were just like
Okay,
in the beginning when you were saying you were a church
right.
kid, and I heard you,
Uh-huh.
you loved the activities and the
Yeah,
different things, the kids' activities,
yeah,
not the church part, but you enjoyed it there. You felt community there, and it
yeah.
sounds like in camp
Mhm.
you felt that community. But for you, did you feel like it was ever about the person of Jesus Christ, or was it more about the community and the church aspect?
I think the community and the church aspect. I don't think I ever really, that's not true. But I did very much think about Jesus in the way that they had always taught us. They like pray and like think of him and like worship him. And like obviously I had that in mind, but I just don't think that I fully grasped it as a kid, as a lot of kids probably do. Um, and yeah, it was kind of just like this thing where we just go and like it was just part of my schedule. Like Wednesdays we'd go to Awana, or like Sundays sometimes we'd go to the like service. Sometimes we'd get crackers.
Yeah.
That's what I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. Did your parents
Yeah.
take you, or was it your
Um,
grandma? Who was it?
yeah, my grandma took me to
My
church
mom.
for most of my life. Um, my parents don't have a great relationship with religion. They don't love it. Or at least my mom doesn't love it because she was kind of forced into a private Christian school that wasn't very good to her. She just didn't have a very good time. So she's kind of not anti, but not pro. So yeah, she tries to stay away. But she's always been like, if you want to go to church, that's totally fine. All your grandma can take you, like no judgment. If you, yes, of course. And same, like if you don't want to go to church, you don't have to. I'm not going to force you. Like just do what you want. Like it's your
Yeah,
choice,
respectful.
which I really
Yeah.
appreciate. Yeah.
Yeah, so what, like, were you baptized? Did you ever take that step of faith?
I was baptized. Yeah. Um I was really excited about it too, because it was this big event that they talked about. And I always felt like it was kind of a qualification. Like you're not a real Christian unless you've been baptized, or like you're not, like you have these sins that you haven't washed away yet, and like I have washed mine away, so I'm better than you. Is kind of how I think of it now. I don't know really what my thoughts were then. I know that I was excited about it because I was like, yes, I can be like the others. Like I can do this like final step in being a Christian, being a good Christian. Um yeah, so yeah, I was baptized and I was really excited about it. And I don't regret that. Yeah, I don't regret going to church or being baptized or any of that. I think it was a good learning experience.
So looking back now, what do you think that baptism was about? Like, what was that it's still a good thing?
Hmm. Just that I know that it's really important. And I don't want to hate on it. Like, because it's a very like sacred thing for Christians, for like the religion. That's a very important step. Um, and I was aware of that. I think I was 11 when I got baptized, and I was like, this is a very important day. Like this is good. This is big. Um, and yeah, just knowing that it is very important for this organization. Um, and that yeah, everyone was so happy for me too. They were like, "Oh, congratulations. Like we're so happy for you." Just like so it just felt like a something that was good. Yeah, a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
When you weren't at church in that period of time when you were a church girl,
Hmm.
what was your relationship with Jesus like when no one was around? Was there something there, or was it kind
Ooh.
of just dependent upon that community? Yeah.
Interesting. That's a great question. I actually I think about this sometimes, and that's kind of um something that has impacted my life currently. Which is like thinking about how I used to think as a kid. I have anxiety. I have since I was a kid, and I would always worry that every action and every thought that I had was being judged. Um, and I remember vividly like having two boxes in my head, and one was red and one was green. And every action and every decision that I made got put into either the red or the green box. And it was kind of like a tally on whether I was going to heaven or hell. And I was like living in fear that I would go to hell as like a 6 year old. Cause yeah, they tell you like, don't sin or you'll go to hell. The hell is a lifetime of infinite suffering, the worst you could possibly imagine. And so, me, like, really nervous about life, worrying that I'm not doing things right or being good enough, I was scared. I was anxious that I wasn't gonna go to heaven.
Mm,
Yeah.
it's interesting. Do you remember people saying that? Like, if you sin, if you make these bad choices, you're going to go to hell? Like, you remember
Yeah.
that conversation? Do
Yeah.
you remember like the gospel? Do you remember them sharing the gospel with you? And if you, I mean, you were at church for a long time, you got
Hmm.
baptized. Do you remember what it was, Noelle? Do you remember that? If you don't,
Um,
that's okay. I just want to hear what,
like
yeah.
not really. I do. Hmm. Yeah, I guess not everything that I remember is bad. I think just that's the part that stands out to me more, right? It's like kind of what's more relevant in my life. Um, yeah, I don't really know. Yeah. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Well, like I told you when we met privately, I don't really push back on this first episode. I just want to hear your story. I just want to hear
Yeah.
where you're at. And I really appreciate you sharing all of that from your past. You
Yeah.
alluded to it and you mentioned it that after you started doing some critical thinking of your own,
Hmm.
um, you came to some different ideas. Tell me about that journey.
Yeah. Um, as I started getting older and started like being in middle school, and like I think also like having a phone and having access to the internet and like having more like experiences with different ideas. I remember I was at Camp Gilead and they were doing like a sermon. Um, and one of the pastors was talking about how like it was, and this isn't like a jab at anyone, but he was talking about how like this group of men were going hunting with their like really big guns, like AR whatevers or something. I don't really remember, but he was talking about how it was so awesome and godly and manly that they were doing these like going out and shooting guns and like being violent. And I just sat there and was like, we have a horrible gun violence problem in the United States. I don't think that's a good thing to be praising, like the use of assault weapons. Among other things, like they said, like we don't like idols. You shouldn't falsely idolize anything other than God. That includes your phone. If you have a phone, you're idolizing it and you're being ungodly. And I was like, everyone has a phone. Like we all idolize it. And you're just like, I don't know. And I also just at that point I was like, why are you teaching us about this? Why are you telling us not to idolize our phones and that guns are good when like that's not in the Bible.
Mhm.
That's not in the Bible. So it's just yeah, it's I guess yeah, my kind of qualms with it is the way that it's transcribed to us and
Mhm.
the way it gets interpreted by usually white straight men,
Mm.
who kind of, from my experience, push their own personal beliefs into it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. I know you've mentioned a couple times that you're interested in social justice. It sounds like that's
Hmm.
a very important part of your life. And you're up
Yeah.
in Western, and I've been to the Western
Hmm.
campus. I know that it's
Yeah.
very, it's a whole subculture of its own.
Yes.
And I
Yes, it
know
is.
last year you told me a little bit about your, I think it was your women's studies
Hmm.
class. Tell me
Yeah.
where you're at in a social, like what is your worldview now? I'd love to
Yeah.
hear that. Tell me about that.
I've really been trying to do some deep inner kind of thinking about my like my own personal beliefs on these things and not just what the internet's telling me or what what I'm hearing about. I want to know like what I actually think. And my kind of thinking on it is like we just need to love everyone. Like that is the very bottom line is that we just need to love and accept everyone. Um and treat each other well, treat each other with love and respect. Just because, you know, someone is different or like weird to you, doesn't mean that they're bad. And we can still love them. Um, and it upsets me like this idea of like hierarchological stuff. Um,
Yeah, that word.
that word, yeah,
We know what you mean. I know what you mean.
yeah, and just the like sense of superiority of
Mhm.
certain people, certain groups, um, and the inequity that a lot of people face, and the kind of um, apathy that is shown towards it, and like not a whole lot of effort
Mm.
gets put in, I feel like, to kind of help the people. The people.
Yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, just love. Love and acceptance and happiness and joy. That'll bring us together.
yeah.
I
Where
don't
are
see why we need to hate.
where are you with the Jesus thing? Where are you in terms of him?
Hmm. Also with a lot of personal thought and introspection and whatnot. And being a biology major, I think has had a little bit to do with it too. I just like don't believe in him.
At all?
um,
Like
it
that he was a
just
historical figure at all, or just in the resurrection, or what?
I just kind of have a hard time believing that it's real, like that it even happened, or that it's like I don't know. I kind of am able to separate myself from it
Mm-hmm.
and view it as an object rather than something that I truly think about and believe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I feel like it's hard to try and convince myself that he is real or does exist when I like don't believe that. I just don't. Um, yeah, and that's just because of how how I am, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
My life experiences and what I've thought and the conclusions that I've come to on my own. So
Yeah. If he
yeah,
is real, would you want to know?
huh? Yeah, for sure. I think so. Um, yeah, this guy is great. He died for our sins. He's selfless. He's done these good deeds, and like if he really does love us unconditionally and he does exist, like that'd be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
And I don't see any problem with hoping that
Yeah. Well,
or
then,
yeah, even believing it.
well, you came to the right place because we're going to
Yeah.
try to answer that question, right?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
um, okay. So before you came on, you filled out the survey. Thank you for sharing all of that, by the way.
Yeah.
So, and none of this is a surprise given what you've just shared, but I just want to
Mhm.
point them out and ask if you want to expand on any of this. So I
Mhm.
asked you to identify anything that you found that resonated with you on a list of different things. And you said someone who doesn't believe in God or seriously doubts that he exists, someone who wonders how science and faith can coexist, someone who grew up in church but has questions or concerns about faith, someone who likes to experiment with tarot cards or crystals or astrology in
Mhm.
general, someone
Mhm.
who thinks most Christians are probably haters. We'll have to talk about that one. Someone who's been hurt by Christian people, someone who is having a lot of fun in her life right now and isn't sure faith is relevant, someone who has questions about other religions or faith expressions, and someone who isn't sure about the Bible. You marked all of those. Is there anything that you
Yeah.
want to expand on before we dive into your specific questions? But I think there's a lot there, and I'd love to hear the things that are most, yeah, of those things that I just listed off that you feel most tender towards.
Mhm. Not necessarily most tender towards, but I was interested in the astrology tarot cards crystals one.
Mm-hmm.
And I hadn't really thought about how that kind of would maybe be something that was a concern for people who are religious.
Mm-hmm.
Because it, in from what I understand, it's a very like spiritual practice. And you kind of got to be like in tune with yourself and your body and the earth, um, which I really think is very very cool. Um, but I hadn't really given it any thought about the fact that Christians wouldn't like that or maybe wouldn't be so into it.
Mm.
Um, because it's like, I don't know, like throwing in the word like magic or like kind of this weird witchy vibe.
Mhm.
Um, and I kind of didn't realize that maybe that being interested in that would be kind of going maybe farther away from Christianity.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
How often do you use tarot cards or astrology, or
I
how
have
into it
never
are you?
used tarot cards.
Okay.
I think they're very cool. Again, I also kind of don't really believe in those. Same with just, I think they're very cool, and if I would accept a tarot reading, but I don't know if they really have any serious, real meanings.
Mm.
But that's just, I don't know very much about it also.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and astrology, I think astrology is cool. I don't really, again, I don't put my life into it. I don't make decisions based off of it, but I think it's fun to like have my horoscope and like just a little vibe for the day. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's awesome to be spiritual and like give your energy to these crystals or kind of receive energy from them and the earth and just like the vibes.
Mhm.
I do really think like being spiritual is a very cool thing and a thing that humans should experience.
Yeah.
Whether that's in Christianity or Buddhism or crystals or nothing, whatever you want. So,
Do you think there is a creator at all? I know you marked that you weren't sure, and
ooh.
you said that you
Uh-huh.
weren't sure the story of Jesus or who he is even existed. But what about God in general?
Ooh, these are such good questions. Oh
It's
man.
like I've done it before, Noelle. It's like I've
It's
done this before.
crazy. It's like it's your job.
You didn't know. By the
um
way, she didn't know. You had no idea. You're like, what? You have a podcast? What?
what?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's see. I I don't know. And I think that's why I kind of identify with the the being agnostic,
Mm.
because I really don't know
Yeah.
um where we came from. And I think a lot of like the hype with religion is like we really want to know where we came from, but also like we're just here. Maybe we're just here, and maybe we can just live our lives happily
Mm.
while we're here, and maybe we don't have to think about where we came from.
Mm.
Because I really don't know,
Yeah.
and I don't think anyone does. Nobody actually does
Mm.
to me. So
If
yeah.
if God is real and he created the world, do you think that he wants a relationship with you, do you think that that would impact your life? Um, I know you said earlier that if
Hmm.
Jesus was real, you'd want to know,
Hmm.
but how would that impact your life if that were true?
Hmm. I guess if there were proof and there was like something that I kind of would like concretely understand about God,
Mm.
I think I would probably find a sense of security in knowing that somebody's looking out for me.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that's awesome for people who are religious and do like believe that someone's looking out for them. Because that's awesome. That gives you hope and it gives you the courage to keep going,
Okay.
to know that things are going to be all right. And I think that's great. Um, so yeah, if it was true,
Mhm.
if there were a way to know,
Mhm.
I think that'd be awesome, and I think I probably would benefit, as would everyone.
Mhm.
But just we just don't know.
Mm. How convinced are
Yeah.
you that we could never know? Like you've mentioned it a couple times. I'm just
Yeah.
wondering, like, how much have you dived into? it, or is it something that you're just like, I mean, and not to dismiss this because I've talked to a lot of
Oh,
young women.
yeah.
It's totally, but like that's not
Yeah.
really relevant in my life right now. I don't think you can
Mhm.
know anyway. Or is it something that you've really looked into for yourself?
I guess I've just kind of gone with the fact that I gave it a good try as
Mm,
a kid. Um, yeah, I gave it a good try. And growing up, I just was like, maybe not, maybe not. Um, I kind of lost my train of thought.
that's all right. That's all right.
Okay.
We
I
can
was
move
doing
on.
so good.
You're doing
Okay.
awesome. Are you kidding? This is
Yeah.
awesome. I'm loving our
Yay.
conversation. Yes.
Yay.
Okay. Um, all right. You've also shared this in the survey. You haven't mentioned it here. You can share as much or as little as you'd like about this, and we can always edit this later. But you said, I really dislike, this is the one thing that you pointed out. I really dislike the hatred toward the LGBTQ plus community from many Christians who claim they spread love. Tell me about
Hmm.
that.
Yeah, that is like my biggest number one, big number one reason for kind of not loving the Christian church.
Mm.
I'm a gay person. I identify as lesbian. Yeah, as of now, there's kind of been some it's
It's
hard, it's
fluid.
complicated.
It's fluid.
It is. It very much is. Um, and I that is who I am. And it took me some years to kind of realize that. Um, and hmm, yeah, I don't love again, like for me, it's love, spread acceptance, spread kindness, and just yeah, the hatred that I personally have experienced from people waving Bible verses in my face
Mm,
as they're telling me like I'm an abomination, I'm going to hell, I'm doing a horrible thing for sitting with my girlfriend at Pride.
mm,
So it hurts.
mhm,
And it makes me not want to be any part of that.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I asked for some very specific questions, although you've brought up some great topics already.
Mhm.
So we're probably going to have a lot to cover.
Yeah.
Um, but in addition to the topics you've already brought up and the things that we've kind of gone over, I asked for some specific questions or doubts you may have about Christianity or belief in general, and to
Mhm.
list at least three. And you, one of the questions that you asked, which I think is great, it's never been asked here before that I know of, at least not on the survey. You
Awesome.
said, why is it important to you that I believe in God? Tell me about that.
Yeah. Um, I think it's like I really like that you're doing this podcast and I think it's awesome. Like and I think you got a great thing going. And I wasn't really like I had basically no idea like what you were doing. I had never listened to it before. And I've like kind of been waiting for an opportunity to like
Hmm.
get to share my opinions with someone. So this is very exciting. Um, but yeah, I just kind of like I ooh. Give me 1 second. Um, I feel like Christians make it their job for those who don't believe to know that they exist and that they should believe.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that's a very like big quality of the church of like spreading Jesus and like trying to like give him to anyone that will accept him.
Mhm.
And that's awesome, but like there becomes a point where it's like why do you care so much what I'm doing and what
Mm,
I think?
mhm,
Because it doesn't really affect you what
mhm,
what I think about. Um and whether or not like I don't know. yeah, it doesn't really affect you what I think about
I
or what
think
I believe.
I think that's a great question. I
Yeah.
just want to ask you a couple questions in response to that, and like I said, I don't push back, so I won't.
Yeah, no.
Um,
Yeah.
but if hell were real,
Hmm.
would that explain why Christians might want to tell you about Jesus?
Yeah, as I was saying that, I was kind of like, wait, there's a counterpoint here somewhere. But yeah, and like wanting your loved ones and your family and your friends to not go to hell, that's awesome. That's
Mhm.
good. Like you should not want them to go to hell.
Right.
Um, yeah, and I guess that is very that's a good point. Of again, because I was always scared. Like I don't want to go to hell, but yeah, I don't want my mom to go to hell. I don't want Julian to go to hell.
Right. Right.
Like yeah, so I guess yeah, I mean, fair enough.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
here's another question on that. If
Uh-huh.
God were real and Jesus, is the Son of God, and he said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me," right? Um, and way to eternal, time with Him, but also something real, as in restoration. And this is an acronym for finding something real is an acronym, right? Real is for
Hmm.
restoration, eternity, authenticity, and love. And this is my premise, Noelle. Like I said, come along and see for yourself. But Jesus said, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life. There's no other." And so when I think of the way, the truth, and the life, it's like restoration, the things that are broken, like you were talking about feeling like things belonged in the green or the red, like
Hmm.
it's only Jesus, it's his grace. It's like covers all of that because we all have that, whether we've been told in the church or not, right? And eternity that he holds the doors, he holds the keys to that authenticity that yeah our identities that we put on ourselves, they can kind of come and go depending on the day, but he knows
Hmm.
who we truly are because he created us. And love in the sense that we don't have to earn it. There's nothing we can do to make it something that we've earned, no ladder that we can climb, which I think is another discussion, but like that it's truly love as it was defined to be. And I know love is a high value for you. Like if
Hmm.
all of that were true, and we could actually really, the Christians were motivated not by a duty, but by love. Would that kind of answer that question a little bit?
Hmm. The question of
Why do
why
you
is it
think it's
important to
important?
you? Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm. Um, hmm. I guess like yeah. Um, for other people, their religion and Christianity is very important to them. And I guess, yeah, like some people really like that is their like, I don't know how to phrase it. Like Jesus is this great, beautiful, like amazing thing, and I just want to share it with you. And I think that's awesome. Like that they would want to give me something that has brought them so much peace
Mm,
and so much love and like tranquility for for lack of a better
right.
word. Um and just I think that's awesome, like when people want to share something that they love with others. I think
Hmm.
that's awesome. Um but it just kind of becomes a problem when it becomes forced or
Hmm.
angry.
Yeah.
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 I hear you on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. We'll bring someone else
Yeah.
smarter and wiser to come and address some of that, and along with some other
Mhm.
things you brought up. But that's great. Okay, we're running long on time here, so I want to make sure that we make time for all this stuff. Okay, you also asked, the Bible is an ancient, many times rewritten and retranslated book. How are we supposed to know what was meant 2,000 years ago, and how can we genuinely believe in something with so much gray area in its very foundation? Um, that definitely has been asked on the podcast before. We'll definitely dive into Bible authority and all that stuff. Um,
Hmm.
but I'd love to hear, as you express a little bit more about this question, how much of the Bible have you read for yourself?
Yeah, not a lot. I I haven't. Just the stuff that they made us read in church. I tried one time and I think I got like I started Genesis 1 and I I think I got like a page in. I was
Yeah,
like, this is boring. I could do anything else.
yeah,
Um, yeah, so I haven't had like a real drive to read the Bible. And
right.
that's a solid point. I haven't read the book, which yeah,
Okay.
that gives me kind of a yes, I haven't read the book. You got me.
No, this isn't.
So
I got you.
yeah,
I'm
but
just
you're right.
wondering.
Like
I'm
that
wondering.
is a very good point. Like absolutely, I haven't read it for myself. So
Um, uh, but you do have a point. So I want you to share.
yeah,
I want you to share your problems with the Bible, on the outside
yeah.
looking in kind of thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. This I just like. Oh, yeah. The way like I don't know. It's like when you put something into Google Translate and it like you put it back and back and back, and suddenly the words are different.
Mm,
Um, I feel like that's inevitably happened.
mm,
There's the Bible wasn't written in English to begin with, and it wasn't written in 2024.
mhm.
So there are certain things that we would probably want to do to make it more under like legible and like so we can actually understand and study and know it. But I think with that, there have been changes made
Mm.
um, that kind of misconstrue. But that being said, I have no idea what the original meaning was,
Mm.
or the original words, or the original vocabulary. And a second point, but also like you guys know that you guys know that it's an old book and it's been translated, and you still hold it true,
Mhm.
which is cool. But the way we use it as law, so to speak, um, when it's so again, like how do we really know
Right.
what it meant?
So maybe the question is about how can you consider it authoritative, right? Like,
Yes,
okay,
yes,
and like form your whole life around what it says. Would that
right.
be good? A good
Yes.
conversation? Yeah.
You got it. You
Okay.
nailed it. Yes.
Okay. You brought up
Yeah.
a ton of topics. I'm going to go back and I'm going to flesh out some of the questions and different things that have kind of been alluded to.
Uh-huh.
I think that if you're okay with it, and you are welcome, the way this works, Noelle, and I know you and I have talked about this privately, but I will invite you to the episodes that get recorded for any topic that you've brought up that where we're going to address your story or your question specifically. If you're able to
Nice.
come, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Because I would love for you to, like I shared with you before, in a lot of ways, you're advocating for a lot of people who have a worldview like you. And so
Yeah.
you brought up some great things just in how even the very first list of things that you identify with, and I do want to ask you though, very specifically, because you kind of, it wasn't that you alluded to this, you actually said this. Um, and I know that some of this is our cultural moment, but she said something about white, straight males, older. And
Yeah.
occasionally I have
Yeah.
older white straight males on here to talk because a lot of them have some
Uh-huh.
really great insight. If I invite those gentlemen on here, can you promise me to show the same kindness and respect? Or would it be better if I didn't invite them and just explain to me or whoever's listening why?
I will do my very best to not be a hater. I don't want to offend anyone, and
I
that
know.
was yeah, that was
No.
kind of just yeah,
It,
that's perfect. Whoever wants to talk to me, that is all good. I'm all good.
well, but I understand where you're coming from though
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. You
No,
want some
I'm
diversity. Yes.
for sure. Yeah, whoever is all good.
Okay, good.
No worries.
Good. Because I know some really good ones, but I'm like, oh,
Hmm.
you know.
No,
Um,
and
yeah,
like you won't offend me either
good.
as well.
Good.
I'm not.
We're still gonna exchange gifts on Christmas, is what you're saying.
Yeah, not. Yes, yes,
I'm excited for
yes.
this, Noelle. Like I said at the beginning, just to get to
Yeah.
know you more.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. Okay. I just want to read this real quick because you've already mentioned it, but I think that you said, and obviously we were 30 minutes in before this came out, but I want to bring it up one more time. You said, I've been screamed at by people protesting LGBTQ plus rights, told I was going to hell, and that, quote, people like me are perverts and pedophiles. I also dislike the community and culture of the Christian church. I feel like it's very surface level, and a lot of people go to church to keep appearances up in their social life. For some people, it's more about looks than it is about faith, and that makes me sad. So, to summarize some of that, do you feel like some of it is very disingenuous and that's what turns you off? Or is it also that it feels like people aren't doing what they say that they believe? They're not loving people when they say that
Hmm.
they love people. Would that be part of it?
Definitely both of those
Okay.
for sure are a big part. Yeah. Practice what you preach
Yeah.
is is very important to me as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I had asked you this question before, and you said yes, but here you wrote down maybe. If
Okay.
what Jesus said was true, would you want to know when he said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life? No one comes to the Father except through me. He also said, I'm the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. And that's both of those are in the book of John in the Bible. You said maybe. Um,
Mhm.
yeah. Tell me a little bit about that maybe.
Interesting. I think I just kind of wasn't sure about the question. Um, but the way you phrased it earlier,
Okay.
like,
That was
kind
a
of
better
helped
way.
me. Yeah, I think so. But yeah, like, if this dude was real, I'd meet him.
Okay.
I'd say
Okay.
hey. Yeah.
Well, let's go, girl. Let's go, girl. He is real. Let's find out together. Okay. And then, who or what inspires you? You said people who are kind and show love to others with their actions, people who are happy with themselves, people who are confident without validation from external sources. Um, it's all good. Why did you choose to come on the podcast today?
Ooh. Well, it's always been kind of like a dream of mine for somebody to ask me my thoughts.
That's
I
so
like
cool.
nobody ever has, so it's awesome. To like
Hmm.
yeah, be able to share. And this is a topic that I really do care about. And am always willing to talk about with anyone that wants to talk to me about it because I think it's really important to hear different perspectives. And I think
Mhm.
you've made some awesome points. Like I've learned a lot. Yeah. So it's very cool.
Yeah.
It's a
Well,
good new experience.
I'm excited, Noelle. I'm
Yeah.
excited to go on this journey with you. And
Yay.
I mean, I've had a lot of conversations over the course of this and spent a lot of time, digging in. Married a science teacher, who became an
Yeah.
administrator. Uh,
Yeah.
it's not just, I think there's this whole idea of your truth versus my truth, and why can't we just all have our own truth? But you're a science major, like there's some realities and then there's, subjective
Some
realities.
concrete. Yeah.
And I would say
Yeah.
that God is an objective reality. And if he is, we want to know, right? We want to know.
Yeah.
The final question that I ask everybody, it's a I changed it a little bit. So let's see, how does it go? It's been a while since I've asked. I've been on vacation. Holiday brain fog here. The Finding Something Real podcast is about a journey towards restoration, eternity, authenticity, and love, all things that I, as a Christian, believe are truly found in relationship with Jesus Christ. R is for restoration, again, meaning that only God can heal the broken parts of us, that the sin, the anxiety, the depression, the angst, all of that is found in Him. Eternity, that hell and heaven, those extremes really do exist, but God says, I am the way to eternity with me. Authenticity, again, like he knows us, he created us. Our fingerprints, nobody in the history of ever has ever had the same fingerprint. Did you know that? It's amazing. And then
Very cool.
love, like that, what we desire, this like faint shadow of love, is truly found in him. If all of that were true, and Christians like me were right, that we can have restoration, eternity, authenticity, and love in Jesus, which of those things would stand out to you the most right now, and why? Restoration, eternity, authenticity, or love?
I'm gonna go with love. Yeah. Um, yeah, it's so important to me that we love each other
Mm-hmm.
and yeah,
Yeah,
just be kind,
yeah.
be
Kind of,
good people.
kind of going back to the way you were treated by somebody growing up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You're hungry for that. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. We all want that something real, and sometimes there's a certain thing that like grabs our hearts more than others. And I think,
Mhm.
yeah, love. Yeah. Noelle, this is exciting. All
It's so
right.
exciting. This
I
is
can't wait.
great. Yeah.
Noelle, thank you.
Yay.
All right.
Thank you.
Until next time.